pray for that vision as a leader so that when you look at your people, God shows you who they can become. And that's the person that you as a leader should work on developing them toward.
Hey, what's happening, family? Welcome to another episode of the Future is Here podcast, where we discuss leadership principles you need to lead this next generation. I'm your host, Tommy Nixon. I'm here with my man, Robert Boydas. Today, we are talking about if you want to be successful, here it is. This is what you need to know. You just need to know your people. Now, you're like, well, duh, I know their names, right? I know who they are. Here's what we're talking about, though, is knowing your people, kind of a guide, and how do you actually do this? Because, again, our version of leadership is, our job as leaders is to help those around us become who they're created to be while on the vehicle towards the vision and mission of what God's given you. And so, but we find so often that a lot of leaders actually don't know their people.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm the leader, I have the vision, you're here to help me accomplish what God's given me to do.
Yeah.
So you're kind of expendable in some way. And so I'll know you enough to know how to utilize you.
Right. What you're good at. So that you can help me accomplish what I've been called to. But we want to change this paradigm for you. And so today we're going to be talking, what does that look like and why? The better you know your people, the better. Those are your keys to success and growing in that. Yep.
So, and part of that is a couple benefits of this, right? Now, this might sound elementary to you, but here's what happens when you start thinking in this way. One, you get better retention. People know that you care about them. We talked about the building blocks of trust last time. So go back to that episode, listen to that. Yeah, better retention. That helps you when you start to understand people. It helps you know how to lead them better, right? So if you're tired of turnover, you're tired of kind of conflicts or the culture or the office space or kind of feeling kind of yucky because there's all the stuff we haven't talked about. It just feels like you're not, on the same page and what's your problem? Those kind of feelings. If you want a better organization, what people want to come work for, then this is actually really important for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we say this a lot in leadership that, people are our most valuable resource, but we don't really believe it.
Right.
I mean, I think we treat people as a resource only. And I think that's where we've gone wrong, right? Because we use that term and then we think, oh, cool, people are a resource. So I'll just consume the resource because that's what you do with resources. Let me consume it. And if I burn it out, I need more resources, right?
That's right, yeah.
But there's this thing with true leadership, the leadership that we're trying to help leaders live into is this idea that we really want to understand how people are made.
Yep.
God has uniquely created each and every individual. He has uniquely given them these life experiences, these family experiences, these cultural experiences that are beautiful and unique to them. He's given them these, he's allowed them, I should say, to develop these skills over time, right? Those are important as well. He's gifted them spiritually with spiritual gifts. So it's important for us to understand that. And then I think it's also important to understand just your competencies, your abilities, right, in general, what it is that you're able to do. So all of those things kind of work together to form a whole person.
Yeah.
And that's really what we care about as leaders, is understanding the whole person, because that's the only way that you could help them become who God created them to be.
Yeah. And so we talk a lot about this on this podcast in our leadership at the organization, that people are a gift, and people, if you view people like that, not just I love how you said they're not just a resource, because resources get used up, right? And so often leadership looks like that. Like, and even the way we talk about leader, like you got to push or pull the person, like, towards the thing that we're trying to get done. And then that's kind of thrown up like it's good leadership because I was able to coerce these people to do what I want them to do to reach this goal. But really, if you look at people as a gift, and your leadership is there to help not shape that gift so that it be given and received, then when you understand who the person is, so in one sense, it's understanding the gift that's being received. Yeah. Now, if you don't understand, so if somebody gives you a gift, have you ever had a gift, someone give you a gift, and you open it and you go, oh, thanks. I don't know what this is, right? And they're like, oh, it's this really cool thing where it's like a back scratcher, but it also like massages your back. And you're like, oh, dude, yeah, I need that because my back itches and I'm sore, right? Or whatever it is. It's like, if you've ever opened a gift like that, and I have too, there's that awkward moment when you're like, oh, cool. Yeah. But I think we treat people like that, where it's like you start to get to know them or you start to experience them and you're just like, I don't get it. And instead of seeing them as a barrier, see them as a gift. And then you want to try to figure out what that looks like, because the more you know who they are, and you can receive that gift, the more productive they'll be, the more value not only will they bring to the team, but they'll experience that value in themselves as well. Yeah. Again, you're unlocking the gift in them when you're like, hey, I see this in you. Hey, let me put you in a certain place to win. Hey, I want to receive all that. And then also you can speak back into their lives to go, here are some things that are hampering that gift, right?
Yeah.
Character stuff, you know what I mean? Skill set, competency, right? Chemistry stuff, all that kind of stuff that helps them be a better part of the team. Super important. And so a couple things and just some basics for then how do you do this? How do you get to know your people better? Now, sometimes we share some of these things on this podcast and it feels really elementary. Like I'm like, really, we have to teach people how to know people?
Yes, we do.
I think we do, because what we're experiencing out there is there's a whole bunch of gifting there and people are missing it.
Yeah.
And we're not setting people up to win, and that which doesn't set us up to win. And then the kingdom doesn't win from that because of the structures and some of the ways that we do the corporate culture stuff that we do. And so one real basic one, man, just to start off with is once you understand and have the baseline value that people are a gift, and you're there to help them become who they were created to be, you really just want to be curious about people's stories, not just their skills. You want to understand, like, who are you? Where are you coming from? What is the lens which you look through things? And so a lot of times we talked a couple of episodes ago about, then and now leaders and the different types of leadership. Well, if I really don't care about your story, then right to the last time when we talked, then I don't actually really care about you.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually not valuing you. And if I don't curious and I don't want to learn from you, so there's actually a step first here that's really one of humility. If I'm a leader and I think I'm just better than everybody and you really don't have anything to offer here or to me, then now I'm going to treat you that way.
Yeah. So another analogy, because you used a back scratcher massager.
Yeah, that's random.
Which, no, that works. But, have you ever received a gift of a book?
Yeah.
Has somebody ever given you a book?
Yeah.
That you didn't ask for?
Yeah.
But they gave it to you?
It's like, you need this.
You need this, right? Well, so here's the thing about getting a book as a gift, right? Is I could look at the outside of the book, I could read the back of the book, kind of get the premise, the idea, and then go, man, that's really cool. Thanks for thinking of me. And then put the book on my shelf.
Yeah.
And it becomes basically a decoration, right, for me. And I might pull it out if I need to maybe make my laptop higher, stick it under my laptop,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Or
utilize
we may,
it wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I might put it in so we can have something in the background, of our sets, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Unless I really open the book and begin to explore it and understand what it has to say, that book is not really going to be valuable to me. And so I think what's important is similarly, right? The analogy is when you receive people, you don't want to just receive the superficial thing of the person, right? You don't want to ask a few questions and be like, oh, that's cool. Where you come from? What's your degree in? All the basic stuff, the small talk stuff that we get to know people from. But you want to kind of really dig deeper, right? And understand. So for example, one of the things that I have really learned that's really, I think, shaped my life quite a bit is to learn about other people's culture.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we miss about other people's cultures is that every culture brings a different kind of wisdom with it. Yeah. And if we just dismiss that culture or are not curious enough about it, but we just, okay, we get it, but don't bring that culture here, then we miss out on those kinds of things. Things like the wisdom, right? We were talking earlier about, in Japanese culture, there's so much wisdom embedded in the culture that gets passed on generation to generation. In African culture, tribal culture, right? In Latino culture, there's all of this wisdom because the unique experiences that those people groups have had have led to to
Yep.
them having to figure out life in a way that is different than everybody else. So when you receive people that you are now entrusted to lead, and if you just dismiss those cultures, you're also dismissing all the wisdom and all the beauty that comes with it.
Yeah, which is huge. And especially in this time now where, majority of people who are 21, 22 years and younger are majority people of color coming from multi-ethnic, different backgrounds. And all that stuff matters, It matters. Like, this is how God shaped you, no matter what you're made up of. But also your lived experience, your family of origin, the languages, the country of origin, the culture, like all these things are gift. Your personality mix, right? We talk a lot about the Enneagram here, and there's strengths finders, how you're designed. And we'll talk about that in a minute about how do we actually use certain tools and assessments to help us understand people. But another thing, just some basic stuff for as we do that, is to be observant. One, you gotta not just you gotta think about when we just sat with lunch with everybody, right? And we're sitting there and we're hearing stories of just people's life and struggles and what they're learning. And there's a posture there that I always take where I'm hearing what they're saying. I'm trying to understand it. I'm curious about, why do they think that way? Or that must come from that. I'm making connections, right? Yeah. And as I make the connections, then I come back to me and go, what can I learn from that? How was I like that? How would I like to be like that? How could I get there? Why are they like that? And I'm not like my mind's constantly doing that. And if as a leader, you're not doing that as you're thinking about the people around you, I think you're missing it, man.
Yeah.
Because then what really you're only thinking about you.
Right. And you and what's next for you and what are you going to do next? And
that's anti-Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't, and so I get it. Yeah, it's hard. But unless you're a leader that's sitting there and thinking about, and here's what's hard for me. I have to think about this in every interaction I'm in.
Yeah. You have to be intentional about it.
I have to be intentional about it. You might be like, and I think about a lot about this, like, and it's hard for my personality, but, how am I coming? What's my energy level? What are people experiencing from me right now? What's my physical, right? I mean, even the way you're physically sitting, standing, looking, like all that, it all matters, right? And so if you have an open posture and you're open for that, to allow people and to be curious about who they are, what that does then is it helps you get to a place of understanding who they're created to be and then saying, okay, but we're in this situation. This is the type of leader I'm at. Here's where we're going. How can I best not just utilize, but where can I put you in a space to win?
Yeah.
Right?
That's good. And I think too, the other part of being observant, because you mentioned that, is not just really, it's not just about seeing how you're behaving or what you're saying or anything, but it's really about learning, I'll just say it this way, learning your moods.
Yeah.
Right. Learning to know when somebody's struggling. Like that's a leadership skill that we all need to have, is if I'm leading people and I become observant of their moods, their, different rhythms, that kind of thing, I will be able to tell when somebody's struggling, even when they're not reaching out for help.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Tell me what, and all of a sudden, they'll actually share their struggle, right? Because a lot of times, whether we like it or not, the people who we're leading are trying to impress us.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to necessarily come across as whatever, take your pick, weak or unknowledgeable, right? Or anything. And so they're not going to share. They don't want you to think that, they can't do the job or whatever. But when they realize that, and it goes back to building trust, right? When they realize that you're actually here to see them win, then they're more likely to be able to share those things. But when they don't, you have to be observant enough to know, hey, I think my employee's struggling. I think they're having a rough week.
Yeah.
I think they're having a rough day. I think they're challenged by this particular assignment that I gave them. And so I need to step in and ask them, hey, is everything okay? How can I help?
And here's the space too that helps you actually continue to become who you're created to be. So we talk a lot about, this isn't static. So it's not only leader to those being led. Like, I'm going to shape you.
Doing leadership to you.
Yeah, I'm doing leadership to you. It's dynamic where it's like, if I allow this also to receive the gift of them to press me to be better. Mm-hmm. And what you're describing, there's a place that I try to do where I'm like, okay, well, like, how am I contributing to your struggle? And so I have to be introspective about that too and be like, oh, I know that. Like, I talked to somebody here that was like, I just didn't want to bother you. And I'm like, but that's what I'm here for, specifically for this person. I'm like, I'm actually here to support you so please bother me. And then I got to go, what am I doing that's letting them know, don't bother me? And that's where we can start to grow and learn from each other and go, or I can be really clear with someone and go, hey, when I leave the party and I don't say bye to everybody, it's not because I hate you. That's
me, by the way.
Yeah. I feel overwhelmed. I was just really tired. I hope you can have some grace for that. And then in other spaces where I go, hey, let's say I'm in an all Latino context. Yeah, I better say goodbye to everybody, right? I mean, there's some cultural things there, right? Too. And not the Irish goodbye, right? It's like, nah, I'm out, There are those kind of things where if you know that about yourself, you know that about them, you can communicate those things. And there's a lot of grace there. And that's that's a beautiful team, right?
Yeah.
And so part of it for us, some real basic things that you guys can do there is whatever you're leading, it's a church, a business, organization, we do assessment tools, you know what I mean? So a couple assessment tools that we do is you could do the DISC test, the DISC test, you could do Myers-Briggs, you could do the Enneagram, you can do Strengths Finders.
Working Genius.
There's so many things out there.
Yeah.
Use them all, because the better profile you have on somebody, the more you can go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Recently, we had somebody that just went through all these. And we were trying to figure out, I don't think this is working for you. Like, I'm not sure I put you in a place to win. And I want to try to figure out why. When we got the results of the test back, we go, oh my gosh, yeah. I'm actually asking you to do something that you're not naturally gifted at. That's unfair.
It's something that doesn't give you life.
And something that doesn't give them life. So they're over there drowning and dying, and we're just going like, hey, what's your problem? And they're like, I'm working my butt off to do what you want me to do, and I can't do it, or I don't understand. Well, that's on us. Like, I can go, okay, let's have a better understanding, and then have the conversation about how do we get you to a place where you can thrive better. Again, knowing them. The other part is what I do with anybody that comes in. One of the first things I ask them is, tell me what your overall vision is, right? Like for your life.
For your life, yeah.
And a lot of times, if they think it's a safe place, they'll be honest. If they don't, they'll say things like, it's to be here for 20 years and to help you accomplish this goal and that goal. And I'm always like, oh, yeah, cool. But for you, what would you? And sometimes it's really beautiful stuff. If they trust me, they'll say, honestly, I just want to be home and raise my kids. Or I've always wanted to be an artist, or I want to write a book, or I want to, whatever it is. Once I can hear that, I go, okay, cool. And I can anchor their experience here to give them the skill set so that eventually at some point, they can go and do that. When I do that, that's building that trust. And then they go, dude, Tommy's really for me.
Yeah, that's rare, by the way. I mean, I know because I experienced that with you. You know, when you came on board, that was one of the first questions you asked me. Like, hey, what are your what are your hopes and dreams? And I'm just like, what?
Get out of my hopes and dreams.
What's it to you, man? No, but I love that because it does show me that you care, but it also shows me that you're thinking about my future as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the most important things that we could do is pray for vision to see the possibility of what people can become, not just who they are.
Yeah. So good.
Right. Pray for that vision as a leader so that when you look at your people, God shows you who they can become. Yeah. And that's the person that you as a leader should work on developing them toward. Right. And unless you know partly what their heart, what their desire is, it's going to be hard to do that. If you're not getting to know them, like this whole episode is about why it's important to know your people. If you don't get to know them on a deeper level that way, then it's impossible for you to figure out how you can help be part of that journey for them and helping them become who God created them to be.
Yeah, no, that's it, man. Another thing that we do too is when you have even an organization, you have like performance development plans, or you built in check-ins.
Yeah.
And part of our check-ins are we usually start with on our forums are, how are you doing? Is there anything and we don't force people to share. You don't have to share all
Yeah.
your marriage stuff, but we just give that space. Are you doing okay? And whatever they want to share there, they get to share. Again, goes back to building trust, but it's also just like the way I think about managing people is really like it's an algorithm for me. It's how are they doing right now in life? What else are they carrying? What are the things that they're trying to accomplish? What are the gaps that they need help in? And how can I best encourage them to be that person that I think God's creating them to be?
Yeah.
Like it's those things together for me that like I take all that into consideration. I don't just take into look, man, this needs to be done. It's not getting done. What's your problem?
Yeah.
Well, dude, your marriage might be falling apart. Well, I want to know that. So I could be like, hey, look, value-wise, how can I support you in that? It's not my job to fix your marriage, but if I understand that, again, building trust and that helps, right? Now, that all matters on how far people let you in. And
Sure.
you know,
And you can't force your way into people's lives.
but that's sure a great barometer to say, how are you doing in building trust in your organization? And so when you get to know your people like that stuff comes up, right? And there's laughter and there's jokes and there's storytelling. And that's one of the reasons we've been struggling with like, we have this office space and people are only in here a couple of days a week, but it's like, why that's so important, right? Now, I'm not here to advocate, office time or office buildings, but you do need that space to get to know people.
Sure.
And so you think about that in your overall corporate culture and events.
Yeah. I mean, I think, what we're trying to do here is introduce this new paradigm of leadership that's different than what we've grown up with, honestly. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I remember, again, one of the biggest interview questions back in the day, right? I haven't interviewed for a job in a long time, so I don't know if people are still asking this, but I don't ask it. But it was like, hey, tell me why you would be good for this company.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that was always a big thing. Tell me how you're going to fit in here. Tell me how you're going to help us,
I don't think they
grow.
ask that anymore.
Yeah. Right? I think the person will get up and walk out the door if you ask them that question. But I think the more important, I love the question of, hey, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? Like, what's your vision for your life? Which is, again, something that as a leader, that actually takes intentionality and it takes time, right? It takes time. If you're so busy as a leader trying to build that thing that you're not sitting down and having those conversations with your people, then you're missing out on a ton of benefits, right? On this beautiful kingdom picture where everybody is contributing, everybody's a gift, everybody is working together toward the mission and vision that you call them, but while on the trajectory of also becoming who God created them to be.
Right, yeah.
Like I think one of the greatest questions that you can ask as a leader is, or I shouldn't say questions, but one of the things that you need to understand about your people as a leader is, hey, what are the things that you value?
Yeah.
Right? What's valuable to you? Because that's important for me to know, again, not just for the sake of, oh, okay, cool, that's what you want, awesome. But it's also important for me so that I know that I have you in the right assignment.
Yeah.
Because if you don't value the same things that particular role needs to value or the organization needs to value, then again, we just need to have the honest conversation about, okay, maybe this isn't the right fit organizationally, maybe this isn't the right role, right? Maybe it's not even the right goal for you to have, right? Because it doesn't align with your values. Yeah. But I think normally what we try to do is we try to change your values to be like, your values need to be my values, right? And unless you're living out my values, then you don't belong in this company.
Right. And when you see that, right? And again, this is the area of how this actually works out. When you do the assessments and you start to get a better profile, and then you're engaging with it. Like, oh, we do talk about the Enneagram a lot. And we're like, oh, if you're a 1, how do you see that as a 1? How it works on a real practical level is then I care about those who I'm leading. So I want to, do the building blocks of trust. And as I do that, I'm also thinking about Robert sends me an email. Or here's a better example. I need to find something. And I know that Robert's already sent me 3 emails about how to do this thing, or maybe set this thing up on an Excel sheet, or where this thing was at on Dropbox or whatever it is. Now, I could just go, hey, Robert, do you know where this thing is at? But I also know that Robert's like, did you know how many people are constantly asking Rob about, hey, how do you do this? What do you do that? So I can stop for a moment and go, okay, I don't want to be another voice for Rob. I know he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's told me some of the things going on in his life. I know the projects that he has. Like, I'm not going to do that. I need to go look. I need to do the work so I could love Robert well in this moment. So I don't jam him up, right? But I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about you holistically, where I'm like, this is how he's made. I know this is going to irritate him. I know all the stuff that he's got on. Maybe if he didn't have all these projects going on right now, sure, I could hit him up. Dude, I'm so sorry, Robert. Where is this at, right? On the back end, on the reverse of that, it could be like, hey, I know Tommy, Tommy's trying to explain this thing, and people aren't going to get it. You know what I mean? And so I'll step in, I'll help him mitigate that by working this thing out. Here's the outline for this stuff. Oh man, thank you. That's really helpful. Like,
Yeah.
Then you start really on a base level, just loving each other better. And when you start to understand that more, and you start to understand the ethnic and the cultural implications and the personality and the work types and all that kind of stuff, it helps avoid some conflicts that don't need to be, because we already understand each other.
Yeah.
And when there is conflicts, then you can come back and go, hey, so I'm sorry, how do you see that? So when I say this, what do you hear?
Yeah.
Like, I hear that you're lazy and you just don't want to do it. And I'm like, oh, but that's just relationship building. I don't know why this is so hard for people, but that's what it is.
I think when you get to know people at that level, and again, that takes time. Okay, just hear us say that. Yeah. It takes time to get to know people on this level.
Oh yeah, years.
And it also means that you have to kind of destroy a lot of your own biases about people, where they come from, their experiences, and all of that, right? So you have to just basically be raw to receive the gift of who the person is, and then try to understand it, right? Because the thing that they may react, like you were saying, right? My initial reaction might always be frustration, because, oh, I sent you that 1,000,000 times and you're asking for the 1,000,000th time, right? First time. So it's also a lot of grace, right? Showing me, because you know me, you're going to show me grace in my response as well. Not to say the response is right. I shouldn't respond that way, but you show me grace because of that. But what I think when the beauty happens is when you start developing a rhythm with somebody, right? With an employee, with somebody you're leading, or even peer to peer, where you know them so well that you can develop a rhythm with them. I don't even know how to explain that rhythm, other than when it happens. Yeah. Right? It's kind of like when, in marriage, where you're finishing each other's sentences, you're starting to kind of think alike. Yeah. Not that you are the same person. You have your own unique individuality, but you still know how to think the same now, because you have a single purpose. You have a single goal. You have a single vision, a single life that you're trying to build for each other together. And so you develop this rhythm of conversation, this rhythm of being, this rhythm of what we call grace and forgiveness with each other. All of those things. None of that can happen if you're not taking the time to know your people.
Right. No, that's so good. So a couple things, man. Just here's some, I think you and I have experienced these. Here's some pitfalls to avoid. As you start doing the assessments, and you start, creating PDPs, and you have, events, corporate culture stuff, and you're getting to know people, and you're curious, and you're engaging, you're understanding someone's a gift, and you're receiving all that. Okay. So, but here are a couple of pitfalls. Now, one of them is when you make the assessment tool the end all be all of that person.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I do like the Enneagram, right? I know some people are like, it's from the pit of hell, but I'm sorry. But it's been really helpful. The pitfall here is to be like, oh, well, Tommy's an 8 and that's just all he is, and that's all he ever will be. Like, no, the Enneagram 8 gives some framework and some language around my tendencies as a person. One, it doesn't mean that I'm stuck in those tendencies. I can grow. And two, that's not all who I am. Like, I'm not just an 8 on the Enneagram. I'm I'm Tommy. There's a whole bunch of other stuff there. So when you make the assessment tool the end all be all, or your full identity of
or the
someone,
result, right? The result, the end all be all.
That's definitely a pitfall. So don't do that, and don't, especially even in our joking, and because you can make fun of other people. That's a big part of our culture here, but we don't just label them and then just write them off because that's just who they are.
Yeah, it's not about trying to put people in a box, right? And slap a label on that box and go, okay, well, that's how you're going to behave all of the time. Because really, there's a depth there to understand that, and it's not just your personality type. That's only one aspect of who you are. Yeah, right? There's so many other things. Your experiences all filter into that. We keep talking about that, right? Experiences matter. Your skills, your gifts, all that. Even your communication style, right, is going to be different. Like every Enneagram communicates differently, but not every 8 communicates the same way. Not every 1 communicates the same way. So it's not just
grow,
and you grow, right?
I don't communicate the same way I did 20 years ago.
And usually when we're boxing somebody, what we're doing is we're putting the negative connotation of that number on that person, right? Instead of knowing like, well, there's a really positive aspect to that as well, right? Being a challenger comes with it's a gift, right? That you can challenge systems, and for me as a 1, right, the way that I see the world orderly and bringing order to chaos, that's a gift, right? So you have to be able to receive those while being careful about, the negative aspects of that personality as well. But I agree with you. Do not make the end result of the test the be all end all. Like, okay, now I know. We're going to put all the 8s over here. Yeah. We're going to put all the 6s over here. All the 3s are like, no, that's not what it's about.
And just a side note on all this is, it's really good too when you have these kind of assessments and you're putting together teams. It's good to have a mix, because you have different giftings and gift sets in that, and you can.
Paul talks about that.
Yeah,
Corinthians, right?
Weird. The body of Christ. So another one is that I found a pitfall of this is when the difference between like character and competency. And usually this comes out around when there's an issue. So something's not being met, a KPI is not being met, a goal's not being met, a project's not being done, and there seems to be an issue. A lot of times leaders, like, it's kind of punitive at first. It's like, dude, they're just not getting it done.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll step back for a moment and just go, are they the right person for that job? Did I put them in a place, like, come here first. Did I put them in a place to win? Why is that? To really start searching out with that person to understand, it's not necessarily like, it might not be a character problem. It might be, right?
Yeah.
Not showing up to work on time. You don't finish anything. You're not communicating well. Okay.
Yeah. There's a pattern of behavior that could lead to understanding character issues.
But it could also be, everything I'm trying to do just seems like the wrong choice.
Yeah.
And it's like banging your head against a wall. And they're trying really hard, but they just can't win. So also coming and having that moment of truth, right? And coming together and discussing it and having those conversations, huge. But so don't always jump to like, well, they're just lazy and they don't know this, and they're okay, maybe, but there's probably a lot more going on there than just that, the initial.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing is to pay attention to the patterns, right, that are happening, because the patterns are going to lead you to whether there's a character issue or whether there's a competency issue.
Yeah.
And if there's a character issue, again, a lot of times you can address that. You have the conversations, you point it out, and some people can adapt to that and be like, oh, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't realize. And, they kind of move into a place where they're developing their own character, right? Yeah. Which is what you want. We all should be developing our character. But if it comes to competency, I think there's 2 aspects to that. One is they may not have the competence to actually do that job.
That's right.
Even though they might have told you they did, even though
or they really
it was
want
clear, or they really want to, but they may not have it, or you mistook the competence for that. That happens a lot of times, right? Like, oh, dude, hey, you're really good at this, man. Let me put you in this role. And that role doesn't, it requires a different kind of competence. But I assume because you're good at this thing, you're going to be good at that thing.
Like, oh, dude, you're a great communicator. And then, but you're not good at writing. You know what I mean? But I was like, oh, but I thought, there's a lot of assumptions. Yeah.
Or again, you're really great at doing that task. Let me make you a manager.
Oh,
That's not,
there you go.
they're two completely different competencies, right? So we have to pay attention to the patterns of behavior, the patterns of performance
You're
in
a great
order to
orator.
determine
You should
that.
lead a church.
Yes. You said it, not me.
No, that's good. Another one I saw is like blurring the relational lines. This one's tough. Is when you get somebody's trust and you're friends with them, and you do know them really well. It can get hard in a work setting where it's like, hey, are you talking to me as my pastor? Are you talking to me as my friend? Are you talking to me as my boss? Are you talking like? And then a lot of that gets convoluted where it's like, I'm upset at you. I'm your boss, but when we were at a party together on Friday night, you like embarrassed me in front of these people, and now I'm going to take it out on you in a work set.
Yeah.
Like
it's what we call the conflation issue, right?
Yep, yeah.
You're conflating all of these different roles that you might play in somebody's life into one role, so much so that they never know which role you're really playing.
Yeah.
And so, there was an article I read called, should my employees be my friends? And I think that what they were getting at was, hey, you need to keep the lines clear between the employee boss or employee or leader, relationship and the friendship.
Yeah.
Like, because it does have all of these issues that might come with it, right? That if I have to actually discipline you for something as a boss, you might not see me as the boss. You'd be like, oh, I thought we were friends, man. What?
Yeah.
Why are you calling me out like this? Oh, can't you just let this slide? Like, oh man, like they just assume, because with friends, actually, even though we know they're lying, we'll take our friends' excuses. Oh,
Sure.
okay, man.
All right, bro.
All right, man. Oh yeah, okay, I get that, right? But then when they try the same thing as your boss, as where you're their boss, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, that's not going to work here.
Yeah.
And then they're confused.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to be careful that we're really clear as leaders, that we're really clear with what particular role we're playing with people's lives in that particular moment.
And a really easy way to do that, friends, is just to state it. Hey, I in a meeting where there's an issue that you're working through, conflict resolution. Hey, as your boss, here are the things, and that takes a lot of work for you as a boss to not conflate it. Like, for you to be like, okay, this is a work issue.
Yeah.
And then be done with that. Hey, as your friend, I would have hoped that this would have happened. You know what I mean? You could talk about feelings and things there. And then, as your pastor, I'm worried about. So I make those real delineations. Like, I need to talk to you about this and this role. And that's easier for someone else to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, their maturity level, they might not be able to hear that from you. But at least on your end, you're being really clear about what it is.
Yeah.
And you've worked through the conflict as well, where you're like, honestly, it's not a work thing. I just was really bummed that they said that.
Yeah.
And okay.
Well, it's about, as a leader, you have to frame their mindset.
Yeah.
Right. When you're having those conversations, like, just simply by saying that, hey, Tommy, can I just talk to you, man? Just as a brother here. Like, even if it's in the office, right?
Totally.
But when I come with that posture, your mindset shifts, right?
Yeah.
You're all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay, he's not my employee anymore. Like,
Right.
And so then I can say something like, hey, the way that you just responded to that person, like that wasn't cool. That wasn't healthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed, as opposed to instead, the work relationship part would have been like, hey man, I'm gonna go to HR with that.
Yeah. Hey, I got to put on my HR hat really quick.
Yeah. So what we're not saying is, just because you're in a work environment, you can only be, boss employee or peer relationship. What we're saying is, just be really clear about where the conversation's coming from. It frame their mindset so that they're in the right place to receive what it is that you're about to share with them.
I think probably one of the last ones. Maybe you have a couple other pitfalls, but I think one of them was like assuming proximity also equals presence.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's interesting, man. I'll give you guys an example that I've been struggling with this relational thing here. When I ran something called Solidarity for like 16, 17 years, right? And that corporate culture was really like, it was almost like a Christian order. We all lived together. We were in the neighborhood together. We're like 24/7.
The ashram.
Yeah. No, not that, bro. Dude. It wasn't a cult, but it was, we all we lived life really deeply together. It was beautiful. But I knew when I came to UIWI, I'm like, that's not what this place is.
Yeah.
But I've also found myself going, but I haven't fully what we're talking about here. I haven't fully given myself into some of these relationships. And it's because I'm like, should I, or I'm afraid to, or when things transition at Solidarity, it was painful, not because of anybody. It just, because it was different. It changed.
Yeah.
And so part of that though is then just assuming yeah, no, dude, we know them, and not putting in the work in a couple areas. One, the time and energy it takes to be curious, but also in the conflict resolution space.
Yeah, that's huge.
Hey, oh man, I got to have a hard conversation with you. And again, the building blocks of trust that have been built so that those conversations go really well. And that's been an area too, is just because you guys are around, you could be around people for years and not know them.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. You need to know your people if you're going to help them become who God's created them to be.
Yeah.
That's just the reality.
No, I do. And I think the other aspect of, proximity doesn't equal presence is just sometimes if you're a leader and you're trying to, let's say mentor or develop somebody, and you're just like, yeah, man, let's just come hang out. Let's just go do this stuff together, whatever. And the assumption that somehow that means that you're present with them necessarily, right? That they're following you around, watching you do stuff isn't, necessarily presence. It's not the same thing, right? And I get that that's been a model that's been, I won't say sold, in the church especially. It's really the apprentice model of discipleship and the apprentice model of leadership development, where it's I think, what is it? It's like you watch, I do, and then we do together, and then I watch you do, kind of thing, right? And that works great when you're developing a very specific skill set, if I'm raising up blacksmiths, that works really great, right? But it doesn't quite necessarily work in leadership, because we assume that just your proximity to being around me doing the things that I'm doing somehow means that you're learning to lead. And
you got to translate that in.
You have to translate that. And there may be a lot of things that don't necessarily fit with that particular person's leadership style. And so you're actually bringing them along and teaching them to lead in a way that doesn't even fit their particular personality or their experiences. Again, that uniqueness that we create them to be. But you wouldn't know that unless you had the conversations with them first to get to know them.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it, man. So friends, we hope today's been good for you as just kind of a primer of what it looks like to actually get to know your people based off of this assumption that we've all made here in this leadership development, that you need to know your people to help them become who they are created to be in Christ, and so that we can reach more young people with the gospel. So hopefully that's been helpful. Go ahead, subscribe, hit that like button, send this to people that need to hear this. And we hope that in your leadership, you're getting to know people in a deep way, loving them as Christ has loved us. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.